Now I think it's probably there's some vanity in being a coach sometimes. You think you're great at it or whatever. And I was no different than anybody else. I thought I was really good. And then one Saturday morning in Blessing, Texas, you humbled me.
No. Oh, no, brother. No. I think, no, brother, I appreciate it. I tell people all the time, 20 years ago, I was chasing things that I'm not chasing now.
Exactly.
State championships and rings and accolades and a lot of, like you said, a lot for vanity and ego. And now here I am, I'll be 51 this Saturday. And I'm just like, man, how perceptions and point of views have changed. And man, I'm just in a completely different, mature space that I didn't even know existed back then. Didn't even know it was like this.
Yeah. I think for me too, like, one of the biggest things was, I tried to be the coaches that I had when I was a coach,
Mm-hmm.
instead of necessarily trying to be the coach that I wanted to be.
We'll see.
And so in saying that, my coaches were old school. They were the, tough, you don't need no water. It ain't that hot out here, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, like I said, I'd do anything for those guys to this day,
Mm-hmm.
but now that I'm a parent and I've had children that have gone through athletic programs and here in Shiner, we've got a great coaching staff and my kid, you talked about it in one of your podcasts earlier that I talked about that it's factor, the special sauce,
Mm-hmm.
See, there's a retired coach here named Billy Turek that my oldest son, Caleb's a coach at Navarro High School now, but I mean, he would do anything for that man. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, literally,
Right.
I mean, run through a wall. I mean, slice someone's throat. I mean,
I know, I'm with you. No, coach, you're right. And that's why I'm glad I'm gonna have you on the show today. I really am. When you reached out, I thought, man, this is perfect. There's not only do we have a history and a relationship, but I think your perspective is going to be really, really enlightening to people today. So all I'm going to do, listen, I'm recording now, but this will all be edited.
Okay.
But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, welcome to the show. I'll actually do an intro later. I do it after. I'll say, hey, on today's show, man, with Greg Murrile, we learned a little bit that. So I don't even do the intro now. I'll just say, hey, welcome to the show. We always start off the show in what I call the GTKY. If you've heard the podcast, you know how it works.
Sure. Yeah.
And we'll do the flip 5. I'll give you 5 simple questions. You flip 5 back into me. And then I got no agenda, brother. I mean, it really is. I want people to know who you are. I want them to know a little bit about your background. And I want to talk a little bit about what you just talked about. What was the difference in coaching and going into administration, and particularly being at the elementary? And then I do want to celebrate your congratulations at is it Region 3?
Region 3 in Victoria, yes, sir.
Yeah. And so is it TASSP?
TASSP, which is Texas Association of Secondary School Principals.
Yeah, so it's weird. You're at the elementary, but you didn't get TEPSA.
Because I have 5th and 6th grade on my campus. So I have a unique campus because my campus goes pre-K to 6.
Okay, so then I was gonna ask you about that because we'll
talk about it. I'll kind of get into that a little bit and talk about the uniqueness of our school, because it's going to be interesting for people who are in bigger schools to understand the uniqueness of a small school. And I want to celebrate that because to me, I tell people all the time, coaching and teaching at the small school to me was the most profound relationships and things that I took away from my educational career than the big schools. And the big schools, I got lost. People didn't even know who I was. No, I want to celebrate that, but the only thing, I have no agenda. I just like to talk about indirectly and then directly. At one point, I want the conversation to be like, Greg, like, okay, so what do you see when teachers struggle, like committing to building to relationships, in the classroom? Like, what are some of the barriers? And I really mean this, and I truly, truly want to know it because I believe everybody experiences them different, but I want to hear from you. Sure. What are some of those barriers that you've experienced and that your teachers experience as a leader and those types of things? Because I want to talk about how do we navigate through some of those barriers that you experience at Shiner Elementary? And then what are some things that you have seen that you've, like, for example, I'm going to ask you, like, how did you build relationships with your staff? Sure.
And just different things like that. But I have no agenda. It's just fun. We'll do about an hour, and then I try to wrap it up, and we'll go from there.
Sounds great, man. I'm excited.
All right, brother. Welcome to the Relationship Centered Learning Podcast, where we put relationships at the center of all learning. Hey, I'm super excited today to have an old colleague, coach, and friend of mine, and administrator Coach Murrile on the show today. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. And I'm excited to be here, man. I'll tell you what, I've like you said, we met 20 years ago, literally. I think it was in 99, 2000. You were coaching down at Tidehaven High School. You were the baseball coach there. Had a great group of kiddos, man. I still keep up with Aaron and a couple of those guys. I see them every once in a while in Bay City on my way down to the coast. You had a great group of kids. I had a great group of kids there at East Menard, and we had several battles on the baseball field. But more than that, one of the things I developed a respect for you as a coach, and I've really developed a respect for you with the things that you've been doing lately with your programs in terms of discipline, restorative discipline plans. I tell you what, I think that's huge, having an alternative to what we would necessarily call traditional discipline.
Yeah.
And more than anything, what we're going to talk about today is how do we develop relationships with students, peers, staff, everybody, that get us all on a cohesive team and let us know that we're all in this together. So I'm excited about talking about that today.
Absolutely, brother. So, hey, we start off, before we dive into the content, we always try to model what we do in the classroom, and that is the GTKY format. So, Coach, I'm going to have 5 questions for you, then you'll flip 5 back in for me. Simple. And I tell teachers all the time, the questions that we ask on the show may not always be the types of questions you ask in the classroom, but they're supposed to be shallow, non-content related, but just fun to get to know you questions. So, sure. Hey, Coach, I'm going to start off with a simple one. If there was a Coach Murrile day and you got to do whatever you wanted for one day, what are you going to do?
Oh, man. All right. So like
you're going to play golf? You're going to go fishing? You're going to take it out? What are you going to do?
Well, I'm going to tell you. All right. So, in our life, my wife and I, my wife's an educator. We have 3 kiddos. One just graduated in college, and I'll talk more about family a little bit. But I'll be honest with you, after the last 6 months of COVID, all right, at this point, I just want to sit down and watch a good football game.
There you go.
On TV, a college football game, whatever it is. I just want to do that, and just nobody bothers me. I just get to sit in my recliner, watch a good college football game, and just yell at the television set.
Yeah. There you go. I love it. Number 2. All right, Coach, you got $5,000 and you got 30 minutes to spend it. Where are you going?
Hey,
where are we going?
I'm gonna tell you what. I'm gonna actually make it pretty easy.
Okay.
I am going to. Right now, they're recovering, but I'll tell you what. When they recover, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go to Hackberry, Louisiana. There is a place in Hackberry, Louisiana called Hackberry Rod and Gun. They do guided fishing, guided hunting trips. One of the best trips I've ever been on was in Hackberry, Louisiana. I went fishing. We limited out literally in an hour both trips with the Stansel brothers. But I would take my two boys and my daughter. She wants to go. My wife and daughter, they're pretty girly. They're not much into that. But I'd take my 2 boys and my dad. We would go down to Hackberry Rod and Gun, and we would just spend the weekend there. I would spend that $5,000, and whatever's left over, I'm going to give it as a tip to our guides. And we're just going to enjoy some time on the water.
All right, brother. Appreciate it. Question number 3. If the ice cream truck pulls up in front of your house or your elementary, what are you getting?
Ooh, okay. So first of all, I'm a chocolate connoisseur. So anything with chocolate is going to be great. But if I had to get something off the ice cream truck, that's like the thing, I'm going to get me a drumstick. A traditional drumstick with the chocolate topping and the peanuts on top. That's
absolutely. Yeah. I still get them at the gas station every once in a while.
Yeah, you can get a drumstick blizzard at Dairy Queen. You can get it mixed in at Dairy Queen like that. So.
All right. Well, I got to figure that one out. All right. Question number 4. When you think of you mentioned earlier, but like if you could watch, you watch college football, but if you could meet one athlete in person, who would you like to meet?
I'll tell you and I've had the fortune to meet a lot of guys, but I'm going to tell you what, a guy that I'm really really impressed with right now, and that I think is a great role model for young people. And that's Deshaun Watson of the Houston Texans. You know, he got that massive contract last week, and I don't know if you were able to see his news conference, but to watch his emotion when they virtually pulled up his family on the thing, and then to know the history of his mother raising him and two sons, and them getting a Habitat from Humanity house and living in that, and the fact that his mother lost her tongue to cancer and she can't speak. And him just talking about that, and the fact that where he grew up, most people don't get out of there, and he had the opportunity to, and just, they were asking about his contract. He said, I'm just blessed, you know, that I have the opportunity, and the fact that he has the opportunity now to take what he's got and go back and fix where he's from. I just think that speaks volumes about his character. And I would just really love to know him better, because that really spoke to me.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Last questions. I'm gonna keep it located in Shiner, Texas. What is a Shiner fact that most people don't even know?
Oh man. Okay. So let me tell you something. Okay. So I will give you a Shiner fact. All right. So Shiner was not originally called Shiner. Shiner was actually called Half Moon, Texas. Okay. And what it was, back in the 1800s, the railroad came sort of a different route through town, and there was a little stop there called Half Moon. So it sounded like something out of a Western movie. But anyway, and Half Moon is actually about 2 miles outside of town here. It's actually down from the school across the road. And there's a sign there. So if you ever come into town, you take a right, there's a historical marker there that talks about Half Moon. But when the railroad rerouted, a gentleman named Henry Shiner, who owned a lot of land in town, they moved the railroad depot down to the new railroad crossing, and they called the community Shiner. And so that's where it's at. So that's a little known fact. It actually originally was called Half Moon. And so our holiday festival that we have every summer, 4th of July weekend, is called Half Moon Holidays. Okay. But that's where that comes from.
Nice, Coach. Hey, man, I love to learn facts about Shiner, Texas. So
there you go.
That's 5 questions for me, or 5 for you. You got 5 for me, Coach.
All right, here we go. So number 1, what is the most exciting thing that is going on in the life of Kevin Curtis right now?
Oh my God, exciting. There's not much exciting in the middle of COVID. No, I'm being honest. I think right now, actually the podcast, because to me, this podcast is giving me a platform to reach beyond my house where I'm at now. I can't get into school. So this allows me to connect and still learn and talk to other people. So actually the most exciting thing I've got really going on, and the only thing I'm really going on right now, is the podcast.
All right. So are you a Netflix binger?
It comes and go. Hulu, Netflix. Yeah, I have gone through my binging stage.
Tell me this: what's the most recent show that you've binged on that you enjoyed? Okay, for my wife, Yellowstone. We're like Yellowstone freaks. So
gotcha. Last Chance U, the college football. Yeah, the one in Oakland. So I've watched the last 2 series, but the last one I watched the whole entire series in one day. It's out of the high school football coach that moved up to the university in Oakland, junior college. And I watched the whole series in one day. It was my football fix.
So tell me this. So tell me a character on that show, your reality show. Tell me a character on that show that you felt like you could relate to.
Oh, the head coach.
In what way?
The fact that he kind of like what we were talking about before we started recording, he's old school. And I believe that he's still trying to figure out, and I think this was his, if I'm not mistaken, 40th year. And he, they had just won, I think, a national championship in 2018. This was the 2019 season, and it didn't go well. He had all 3 quarterbacks hurt. He had to put a receiver at quarterback. It was a lot of duct tape and baling wire. But what he was trying to do was he was pushing kids in an old school methodology, and it was not as effective. And to be honest, as they interviewed some of the assistant coaches, I can't say that they were the way it was produced, it seemed as some of the coaches were not as loyal to him because they were questioning him. And the reason I say that is I tell people all the time in the work that I do now, people say, how did you flip? I said, I didn't flip. I just started calling new plays because don't think
better plays.
Yeah, well, I mean, I tell people all the time, and I'm sure people are tired of hearing this, but I always say some of us are using that 1999 playbook, like when I met you in 2020, and there's some plays in there that work, and there's a lot of plays that don't, and so that really resonated with me, and just the characters, but the coach definitely.
Awesome. All right, so here's one that I think we're going to get into this as we go through this podcast, but when you were a child, all right, and you were scared, lonely, or hurt, who'd you turn to?
My mom. It was
Yeah.
my dad was gone most of the time, so my mom and I were kind of solo package. I was 8.5 years younger than all my siblings, so they were all gone. So my mom was my rock.
Yeah, gotcha. Awesome. Yeah. See, I love the emotion, man. I love that. See, that's what's great about this. This is real.
Mm-hmm.
This is real. Okay.
Absolutely.
And that's my thing about all of this is when you're working with kids, you got to be real. They know fake.
Yes,
they figure out fake in a hurry. So you got to be real.
Okay? Absolutely.
All right. So here we go. All right. So tell me this. What are you most proud of?
Most proud of, man, it's so crazy because if you listen to Jonathan Brown's episode, he's like, what do you give a high five for yourself? And I'm like, man, I'm a good person that's made a lot of bad choices in life. And so it's hard to say high fives, but there's been moments where I've taught kids. There's been moments where, I'm just proud that I was able to make a difference. Like you said earlier, when we have athletes and kids that come back, I'm really proud today when somebody reaches out to me and says, hey, Coach Curtis, or, Mr. Curtis, I don't even think you know this, but you made a difference. Absolutely. And so what I'm most proud about is the fact that now when I work with educators, some of them will say, man, I was thinking about leaving. I was ready to get out of education. I was ready to throw in the towel. But after listening to you today, I'm kind of inspired and I'm remotivated. And I think those are the moments that I start to continue to affirm, like, I think I made the right choice in leaving public education to try to do this. And I think those are the moments that I get the most proud about. Hey, we're still making a difference, even today in the middle of this situation. A Zoom training, somebody will say, best Zoom training I've had. And I'm like, yes. I mean, those are the proud moments I get, Coach, that still know that we can make a difference.
Good stuff, man. All right, last question. Here it is. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Are you an Astros fan or Rangers fan?
Coach, that's so funny. If it's between those two, I'm more of an Astros fan than a Rangers fan.
Okay, so
I'm no, but it's really interesting because a lot of people, I've grown up in Texas my whole life, but if I'm choosing those two, I'm choosing Astros. But what's interesting is I'm not a fanatic for one team. I'm a Texas person.
Hey, right now, I'm gonna tell you right now, I am all about the San Diego Padres right now. They are so exciting right now.
Well, but what I mean is, in other words, people said, so are you UT or are you Texas A&M? Are you Astros or Rangers? And what I tell them is I do have favorites. I did college baseball camp for 10 years with A&M. Mm-hmm. So if A&M's playing Texas, I'm going to be more of an A&M. If Astros are playing Rangers, I'm more of an Astros. But if Texas is playing the Astros or not, I'm going for the Rangers. I'm going for TCU. I'm going for Texas Tech. Anything that represents our state. I'm a Texas fanatic, in that I just want our state to be represented well. So it's not a cop-out. I grew up an Oilers and a Cowboys fan. Oh. But if you ask me, what's interesting, if you ask me I would drew more of a Cowboys fan, but I always tell people before they boo me, I'm a Tom Landry, Roger Staubach, Tony Dorsett kind of, I'm not a Jerry Jones fan. I'm a Cowboys fan, and you have to separate.
You're a true Cowboys fan, old school Cowboys fan.
Yeah, well, you have to separate the two. So just like we separate the GTKY and the content, that's what we start every one of our shows off with. And so as we mentioned, if you want to find out GTKY questions for your students, all you have to do is head over to our website at rclfirst.com. Sign up for our newsletter. You get free resources. We've got 25 GTKY questions that you can download free. All we do is ask that you sign up for a newsletter, and then you can go back in the classroom and use those classrooms to start building relationships and putting connections before content in your classroom. So as we get into the show, Coach, we'll start out. I'm just going to kind of let you introduce your family, who you are as a person. So I want people to kind of just know who you are as Greg Murrile first. Go ahead.
So my name is Greg Murrile. I am the elementary school principal at Shiner Elementary School in Shiner, Texas. Let me tell you this, I have the best job in the world. I get to, and I think the best thing about my job is I get the opportunity to make a difference in kids' lives every day. And there aren't many people who can say they have a job like that. And I think that's the great thing about us as educators. We all have that opportunity. And so that's what makes our job very, very special. I grew up in a small town, very similar to Shiner. I grew up in a small town in East Bernard. My parents were both educators. My dad was a band director, and then he became an administrator. So education was in the blood. I have a sister that's the elementary school principal in Columbus, Texas. I have another sister that is an administrator in Katy ISD with their special education department. My wife is a teacher here. My pride and joy are my three children. My oldest son, Caleb, is 22 years old. He is a teacher and coach, social teachers at Navarro High School in Seguin. First year, he just graduated from Texas State this past year. My middle child, Carissa Ann, is my baby doll, and she is a freshman at Texas State right now. And she is coming home today, so we're excited to get to see her today. She left 2 weeks ago and told me she was never coming back, and she's been back twice already. So I guess she misses her daddy a little bit. So anyway, and then my youngest son, Cade, is a sophomore here at Shiner, and so he's got a JV football game tonight. So we'll be going and watching him play football tonight. So, and then my wife, Dana, is a fourth grade teacher here on our campus, and of course, I'm biased about all my teachers, but I think my wife especially is one of the best I've ever seen. And so I was blessed to meet her years ago through education. So education has been a blessing in my life, and it's all, like I said, it literally runs in my blood because it's all I've ever known. So.
Yeah, Coach, I love that background. And I think that's what makes you kind of unique in this situation. Like it's been surrounding you, education, as you said, growing up. Your parents are educators, you became an educator, your family's educators. So obviously when you guys get a chance to talk, I'm sure shop talk is what's happening in the family at all the gatherings. It's hard to not talk about work.
For sure. And but one of the things that we've kind of had to do that is because, when you're education, it sort of always devolves into griping about education. It's not like talking about the good parts of education, and I have a shirt that I wore all through COVID. Of course, the summer we dress down and we get to wear a little more casual. Of course, this summer I was here by myself, so it wasn't like there was nobody in the school, but I had a shirt on that said good vibes every day. And our superintendent always say, he goes, Murrile, he goes, I'm so glad you wear that shirt. I said, yeah, it doesn't seem like there's much good going on right now. I said, that's where my good vibes shirt. I said, that's why so we kind of got that way with family too. We just don't talk about education when we have to because it generally always devolves into the negative, and I don't really want to go there. So.
No, I'm with you. And I think that happens with any type of educators or that they get together in the same type of common place. And so family or not. So let's start here. One of the things that I've, like we were talking about at the beginning of the show, we met 20 years ago, 99, 2000 season. I'm at Tidehaven, you're at East Bernard. But you look here and you think back, okay, if you could whisper one thing to Greg Murrile 20 years ago, what would you tell him?
Relax, just relax. I was so high strung and so just wired up, and you and I talked a little bit about this earlier. I was so focused on the next level of what we could do, winning district, winning playoff game, getting the state, all those things. I mean, I was just almost obsessed with it, and when I look back on that, I think to myself, why didn't you just relax and enjoy it? Because when I do look back, there was a lot of it that I didn't enjoy because it created stress for me that I endured. But if I had just relaxed and enjoyed the ride, it'd have been so much more fun.
So when you look at from coaching and teaching coming into administration, what was one of the biggest eye openers of oh, wow, because I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter how you prepare for administration. In other words, where you get that master's degree and how what you're, I think it's really difficult because nothing, just like the classroom for teaching, nothing prepares you for teaching, but coming into leadership and leading a campus, What were some of the eye-opening, like, ahas that you're like, wow, okay, no one prepared me for this?
Well, of course, theory and application are two completely different things. I mean, theory is the perfect world we live in. We're in rose-colored glasses everywhere we're going, and then application is the real world, what really exists. So I think the very first thing that I noticed was, as a teacher and a coach, I pretty much knew every day what was coming. I knew my class schedule. I knew which kiddos were coming in the classroom. I knew what we were going to do that day. I knew all that stuff. As an administrator, we roll the dice every morning. We never know what's coming in the door. We never know whether, as we're walking from our car to the front door, we're going to meet an angry parent of something that happened yesterday that we aren't even aware of yet.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. I had a situation the other day where a teacher come in and she was just like, she said, "Mr. Murrile, can I talk to you for a few minutes?" I said, "Sure, come on in." And she closed the door and just broke down. I mean, and I thought, oh my gosh, did someone pass? I didn't know what was going on. And there was a situation with her son. She had just gotten a phone call that they were going to have to go to Houston and see a specialist because of a situation with his eyes. And she was just, and so, you have to be prepared for everything, because it seems like, to use a baseball, it seems like you're constantly throwing curveballs, and you have to be prepared to react to them. And as the administrator, the expectation really is that you're going to, when I was a science teacher, my kids would always ask me these questions, and they might be some question that I had no idea about. But of course, they thought I was the expert on science. They thought I knew everything that ever existed about science. And so I would always use example. I would always tell them, guys, when you go to the doctor and the doctor comes in and checks you out, I said, have you ever wondered why he leaves the room before he actually tells you the diagnosis? And they're like, no. I said, he goes to his office and looks it up. I said, because he doesn't have medicine memorized, And so I would always put it back on them and say, hey, well, I'll tell you what, that's a great question, but why don't you bring that back to us tomorrow and we'll discuss it tomorrow. You look that up and let me know what it is,
Yeah.
Well, here, as an administrator, you got to have an answer. You got to have a plan for whatever comes that you're going to react to it, And so that's the biggest thing is just the unknown, and the fact that every day is a new day and a fresh day, and you never know what's going to happen. So
that's well said, man. I love the baseball analogy. So let me, you mentioned, because we both taught science, we're both coach and teacher, very similar at the time. We were very, very similar people and just human beings at the same time. The more we got a chance to know each other. So I know I've thought this about myself, but was there times when you were teaching that you have like a story or testimony where you realize like the relationship that you had with a kid back then made a difference in some type of circumstance, right? In other words, it was something that you're like, man, thank God I had a relationship with that kid, because that in that scenario. So you got a quick story about how a relationship made a difference with a kid back when you were
So when I was teaching at East Bernard and teaching science, so my classroom was kind of in the corner of the hallway, and the hallway made a left turn there, and it went to the cafeteria, and there was like a foyer and a breezeway, kind of where they kept, back when we used to have vending machines on campus, it's where all the vending machines were, and my classroom was right there on that corner right there, and the kiddos were all coming into class one day, and I heard a bunch of commotion out in the hallway, and I went down there, and we had really good kids at East Bernard, but two kids had gotten in a fight in that little foyer down there, and so I came around the corner, and I didn't even have to say anything. Like, the two boys, one was an athlete and one wasn't, but they both looked up and looked at me, and they were like, both of them like at the same time were like, "Oh, Coach Murrile," but they like instantly stopped, like they like stopped fighting, and I was like, "What are y'all doing?" And they go, "Well, they started giving me he did. I said, "Dude," I said, what is going on, man?" I said, "Come on." And of course they followed me, but I didn't have to argue with them. I didn't have to break them up. I didn't have to do any of that stuff. And I felt like it was almost like a little bit of a respect thing. Like I came around the corner, and without even saying anything, they both looked at me like, "Oh man," and I'm sure the athlete was like, "Oh, coach is going to be mad at us," And kids sometimes have a hard time understanding the difference between he's mad and he's disappointed, And I think that's one of the things that I really tried to instill as a principal is I'm not mad at you. I'm just disappointed in the choice that you made. That's where I am. You know, this isn't about anger. Okay. This is about disappointment. And how do we fix what you messed up? The fact that you made a mistake, because we all make bad choices, every single one of us. And I'll get more on the choice thing in a minute, because it's truly our mantra here, and it's what we use as the basis of our discipline program here at Shiner.
Okay.
But I felt like that's a good example of the fact that they had enough respect for me that as soon as I showed up, they stopped what they were doing, because they knew they shouldn't be doing what they were doing anyway. And then I was like, y'all come with me. They just walked with me down to the office so we could talk to the principal. You know, there aren't a lot of places that happens that way. You know, normally you got to jump in the middle of it, and they're still swinging at you and everything. And, you know, it's like, dude, calm down, you know, but that's one of the examples, you know, and the fact that I bet in my high school career as a teacher, I bet I wrote 3 discipline referrals ever, you know?
Yeah. No, and that's why I say it. I think the educators that are able to understand the power of that relationships and relationships kind of equals respect to kids.
Sure.
And because that's the differentiation in the factor of whether they respect you or not is whether they have a relationship with you or not at times. Correct. So I do believe, and I do echo the fact that something like a school the size of East Bernard and with the stature that you have, like, people know who you are. So therefore, that's why I would say the smaller school, it is easier at times than dealing with the large schools where they're just going to fight at it and you're just a random adult trying to break it up. So I love the fact that you gave that testimony. So let's slide right back over to what you were talking about. Now you're learning and you're teaching kids to learn from their choices. Because the hardest part for me, Coach, I would tell you, and I don't think you've ever heard this. So I was coaching football Friday night varsity, Clemens versus Steele, October 2007, and it was our first time that we had lost to Coach Jinks, and they hadn't won a state championship. This was when they were just starting to.
But they were still in new school, right?
Yeah, they were 2005. They had just started. But here's the deal: I knew I got the assistant principal job at the elementary, but they were like, "Hey, 3 to 4 weeks. It's football season. You're not replacing anyone. It's a new position. We'll work on getting you there." But all I know is on Friday night, I'm coaching football. On Monday, I'm an assistant principal. And within 72 hours to go from the high school to the elementary, man, you talk about a shock factor. And spending 10 years teaching and coaching at the secondary level, and all of a sudden I'm at the elementary. So before we dive into making choices, the reason I say that is all of a sudden I'd use a vocabulary like, "Hey, you're making poor choices," or, you know, I walked in. No, Coach, I walked in and I was like, "Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here." And they were like, "Hey, Mr. Curtis, you want to try to use your inside voice?" And I said, "What the hell's an inside voice?" Right? I was like, what are y'all
That's
talking?
funny.
Because I was like, I got one voice. This is like,
yes,
y'all have different voices? Right. I was like, I coach football on Friday night. Monday, I'm supposed to use an inside voice. And then I noticed, like, they walked kids everywhere and supervised. And then they had bubbles and tails. And I had to open up ketchup packets at lunch. And I was trying to use my teeth. And they were like, "You don't use your teeth." And I'm like, "What do you use?" And they're like, "Scissors." I'm like, "Who the hell uses scissors? I've never seen anyone use scissors." So I tell you all these analogies because these were all the light bulbs. So when I say that, first of all, can you feel my pain, brother?
So and I was same as you. So I came into the elementary world from the secondary world. Okay, so I had never been here, and so my dad gave me a pretty good piece of advice, because he was a band director, and then he was an elementary school principal before he retired. And one of the things he told me, he said, "I'm gonna tell you something, Greg." He said, there's 2 groups of people that you have to take care of at an elementary school. He said, number 1 is all your support staff. You take care of your custodians, you take care of your cafeteria ladies. He goes, because if you take care of them, they will take care of you. And that is rung true forever. I mean, so that's a mantra to anybody who gets in administration. You make sure you take care of those support people. Okay. They'll love you to death. A great story with my dad, and a great story with this. My dad had a custodian at Markham Elementary School when he was the principal at Markham Elementary School back in the 90s, named Johnny Garcia. And to this day, he sends my dad a card on his birthday and at Christmas every year.
Love it.
To this day.
Love it.
And my dad looks so forward to getting that card from him. I mean, it's just cool stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, but what I was going to say is, so like, The other one was, he told me, he goes, you're going to be in a hen house. He goes, you're like the rooster in the hen house. He told me, he said, and you got to make sure the hens are always happy. And you know who the hens are. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All that, those teachers, you know,
Mm-hmm.
he said, so make sure they're happy. He said, because if they ain't happy, nobody's happy at the elementary school. And that rings true time and time again, you know? So anyway, that's just something that my dad always told me. I always thought it was funny, you know?
Yeah.
But
so I don't know.
It's just a different world, very different world.
It is a different world, and I'm not putting it down. I tell people all the time,
Right.
Spending 2 years at the elementary after leaving the high school gave me the best foundation, so that when I became a principal at Carson City Junior High, I was like, oh my God, like, okay, I understand what it's like at the elementary level. Now, as they're preparing for these junior high and middle school kids, I see where they're coming from. Yeah. I always tell teachers, thank you at the elementary. Without you, there is no foundation in education. You teach them respect. You teach them voice levels. You teach them, you know, where it is to be supervised and all these other things. You doing such an amazing job, where I believed, and this was me, I'm like, holy crap, we fail them at the middle school and junior high because there is no transition. Kids go from bubbles and tails and being transitioned everywhere and supervised at every aspect of the school to go to class. Correct. And I think that's, it's like putting kids in pasture, you know, calves in pasture, and they just start running because they're like, oh my God, I can sit anywhere I want. I can go to lunch anytime. You know, I mean, we sit with who I want. There's this inferred, like, you should get it. And it's like, no, it's such a gap between elementary to middle school and from middle school to high school. And so, you know, earlier you mentioned you have a unique situation because of your grade level. So I want you to talk a little bit about how your school is structured a little bit different and how it helps you be successful.
So here in Shiner, we are actually a pre-K to 12 campus. So our entire school district is on one campus. Okay. And so I am responsible for pre-K through 6th grade. And then 7 through 12 is our high school principal, a gentleman named Brian McCraw. And his office is right across the hallway from mine. And at times he's my assistant principal, and at times I'm his assistant principal. You know, if he's off campus or he has a training or whatever it is, I deal with junior high kids. I deal with high school kids. I deal with everybody. My primary responsibility though is to the elementary school. And so I have a gauntlet of kiddos. And in building our discipline plan and what we wanted to follow here, I wanted something that was easily understood by a 4-year-old, but that could also easily be understood by a 45-year-old, you know? And so our mantra here is really simple. When I do announcements every morning, we do typical announcements for any other school. We do the Pledge of Allegiance. We do the Pledge to Texas flag. We have a moment of silence. And then I make the morning announcements, whatever those happen to be. We do student birthdays and all those kind of things. And then at the end, I always tell them, and don't forget, your most important job at Shiner Elementary School is to make good choices. And literally, if you're in our hallways, the kiddos, like, they scream that when I say your most important job is, they say make good choice. So like my pre-Kers are normally in the cafeteria and it's right outside the office right there. Mm-hmm. And so when I say your most important job is, you can hear them, they'll go, make good choices, you know? Mm-hmm. And then where I get the feedback and I know that it's a good thing is when I go in there to have breakfast with them, right? You know, they've just been with me or whatever. They're like, I'm making good choices, Mr. Murrile. And I'm like, fantastic. I said, that's great. I said, that's what I want more than anything, because it's really easy for them to differentiate between, is that a good choice? Is that a bad choice? Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. So that becomes, and it becomes the basis of conversation when I have students who do have to come to me because of a referral or whatever it is. When I first got here to Shiner, it was still very old school. One of the first discipline referrals I ever got was for a student who didn't have a pencil. And I was like, okay, I just got a referral for a kid not having a pencil, you know? And so I took the referral and I walked down to the teacher's classroom and I said, hey, you know, you wrote me a referral for a kid not having a pencil. I said, did you not have a pencil to share with them? I said, one of the things that I used to do as when I was in the classroom, I said, I had pencils and rulers and protractors and whatever we were using on my desk. I said, and what I would simply do with them is say, okay, you give me something and I'll give you something. So this is before the time. Now the cell phone is the most valuable item ever. You can loan them anything for their cell phone and you'll get it back every time. So, but then, they might literally I would say, okay, take off one shoe and leave it on my desk, and they would they thought that was funny, but so I'd loan them something and they had to come back and get their shoe and they bring my thing back to me and we were done, But again, that was relationship building by doing that. I could have said, what do you mean you don't have a pencil, but you didn't bring your stuff to class, but I looked at it differently. Okay. I didn't know the reason they didn't have a pencil either. Okay. There could be a multitude of reasons they didn't have a pencil. The least of which may be, I don't know, mom couldn't afford to go buy them a pencil. And I don't want to make them feel bad because of that. What I want to do is I want to facilitate for them what it is. And so after that, when you come in a new situation, you're kind of watching things. So as we did that, I developed a new disciplinary plan for the district and what we were going to do. And, most elementary discipline plans, Kevin, if you ever look at them, you sort of start on top and then bad choices work you down to the bottom of it.
Okay.
You've probably seen the clips in the classrooms where people use a clip, well, you start here, but you only go down, Well, I didn't like that. And I thought, a kid can't make a single mistake and then that's the end of their day, because if they don't have the opportunity to correct that, to make that better, then they don't learn from the mistake they made in the first place.
Okay.
And so what I did was I created a upside to our clip stick. So everyone here starts on green in the beginning of the day. That's the middle of our clip stick. And so our school colors, of course, are gold and purple. And so you can go up from green for making good choices. You can go up to white, you can go up to gold, and then you can go up to purple. All right. And this is part of our positive behavior expectation plan that we have. And if you get to purple each day and some gold, then you get your name in a ticket box that's in the teacher's classroom. It's like a drawing box. And then on Friday, each teacher draws out 5 names, and they get to come to my office for a good thing. They don't come to my office for a negative. They come to my office for a positive treat. And I have a little store. It's dollar store stuff, stuff the kids love. I mean, whoopee cushions and stuff like that, and so, but they love it. I mean, they absolutely, it's amazing to me. I've got a room across from my office and I'll open the door and they'll go, wow. Like, oh, look, he's got cotton candy today. I always try to change it up a little bit, but it's just so funny to see their reaction to it. But the best part is they almost always come into my office first with their ticket because they want to show me that they did something good so that I'm proud of them. Mm-hmm. That's my reward. That's my reward for the day. And it's why I do this job and what I love about this job.
So when a kid struggles, what happens with the clip, or what happens?
So if they have a bad day, okay, they've got 3 opportunities in the classroom to correct that. Okay. And it's the same thing. There's 3, there's orange, there's red, and then there's black at the bottom. And they know this, that if they go to black on the clip stick, there's the potential for an office referral because they've had 3 opportunities that day.
Okay.
And then what I do is this. Anyone who now there are some non-negotiables, okay? Mm-hmm. Non-negotiables are things like profanity. That's a non-negotiable. That's an automatic referral. Physical altercations between students. That's a non-referral. Any type. I'm on an elementary school campus, so I don't have an issue with drugs, things like that, and weapons. But those would all be non-negotiables, and those are automatic referrals to the office.
Okay.
But the minor things that happen in class, up out of the seat, moving around, those get those warnings, and they do that. So when they come here, though, the very first thing I do is I sit down behind my desk and I have them sit across from me and I say, all right, you tell me what happened. I always give them that opportunity to, in their own words, tell me what happened. I think that's so important to what I do because I give them a voice in what they're doing. And sometimes I know they're not telling me the truth, and we get to that in the end, and we talk about the fact that it's important to tell the truth. But let me tell you what, where we started and where we've come in the 10 years that I've been here, it's amazing to me how few times I have kids not tell me the truth. And I've got numerous examples, and I can talk about some a little bit later. But I think that's the piece that's most important. and then there's consequence. So one of the things that we do here that's unusual is we still use corporal punishment here in Shiner. Most schools don't use that anymore. Okay. It's a cultural thing in Shiner. All right. I do not use it often. Okay. However, I have some parents that want that as a means of discipline for their child. And I do respect that. You know, I try to find the other means before that. And so I very seldom use it, but I just wanted you to know that we still do use that here, but I use it this way. Okay. Every decision that I make as a principal, I make with a parent's heart. And I only use what I would use with my own children at home, with Caleb, Carissa, or Cade. And I literally sometimes have to put a name and a face to my kiddos, which is, okay, Greg, if this was Cade, how are you going to handle this? Right. And I do that because I think my job is so important, because I think as an administrator, this is the most important piece of what we do discipline-wise. If I ever discipline a child for something they truly didn't do, I can never grab that back. I can never grab that back. And I am super, super cautious about that. And I think if I had to encourage administrators for one thing, that's what I would be. You know, make certain when you have to make those decisions that you're making that decision based on what the kid truly did, and not just on what some other kid said or what you heard, or, you know, whatever that is. Make that decision based on, okay, in my gut, do I feel like this really happened with this kid?
Yeah, I think there was a quote I recently came across from a gentleman named Chad Veach, and I think maybe it kind of says what you were just talking about, Greg, and it said, trust is given, mistrust is earned.
True.
And so, in other words, we trust you, but until we don't. And for kids that are feeling consequences, or feeling like, hey, you don't have all the facts, you know, around this. But I do appreciate, you know, the fact that you start out with the first restorative question that we always talk about, which is just what happened, you know, what happened, who's been impacted, and how are we going to make this right? And I think I get, you know, Greg, I know you've never really been to our trainings, but one of the things I want to educate you on is, when I first drank the restorative Kool-Aid after leaving Ed White and going across all 20 service centers and training it, you know, I really was under that lens of like, wait, we shouldn't be punishing at all. And then I started realizing, like, wait, I think that's a shift too far. Let's just go from the right to the left, right? And then all of a sudden I was like, so if we go from all punishments to no punishments, that's not going to be effective either. And that's realistically what makes me different in the restorative arena. Is I tell people I'm a unicorn. I started hybriding the two. I'm what I call restore additional. I take restorative practices and I embed them with traditional consequences. So when I'm still a proponent of in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, and detention, the restorative community is like, no. But what's interesting about that is taking the two pieces together allows us to transition and hybrid our mindsets of understanding, like, okay, there's still some teeth into it. There's still some accountability into it. And I think that that's where most school districts that have been, in my words, anti-restorative have said, hey, we're interested in your model because your model's not like everyone else's that I hear about, or that I hear or read about restorative, because in your restorative model, I still feel like there's some sense of accountability other than just a conversation. Does that make sense to you when I say that?
Yeah, and I think the tough piece of that for an administrator is the fact that you know, if we look at the landscape of education right now, and particularly in staff, if we look at the landscape of education in terms of staff, I would say the average age of an educator in the state of Texas is late 40s, early 50s. I would say that's probably, you know, when you and I were going through college, there were a lot of education. You know, my son just graduated from Texas State a year ago. I mean, he probably graduated with about 200 teachers at the biggest teacher. I mean, we're fixing to go through a very tough time in education when all our 50-somethings, you and I included, start retiring from this business, because there's not going to be enough kiddos coming out of college to fill that void. And our numbers are continuing to grow. Our classrooms are getting bigger. And so that's something that the colleges, universities, career paths need to really start looking at. Is we're going to face a very difficult time in education here I would say within the next 5 to 10 years. That's my guess.
Yeah. So when you think about this, I know that when the kids come and bring you a ticket, let's go back there. Let's circle back. When the kids come bring you back a ticket, Coach, I know this about you, and I can see this in your eyes, and I can see it in your spirit. Like, you love these kids and they love you. So what are some of the things, that you feel that you do as a principal that helps you build relationships with your kids?
Well, number one, I'm real with them. So, and when I say I'm real, let me give you an example, literally an example from today. This is an example from today. So I was doing some walkthroughs this morning. I went down to my pre-K and my kindergarten wing, and I was going through some pre-K classes. And I went into the kindergarten classrooms, and I got a little boy there named Clinton. He's cute as a bug. Now, he's a pill, man. I'm gonna tell you what, but he's still cute as can be. And we're talking. They were doing calendars, so they were talking about that today was Thursday and tomorrow's Friday, and they were doing that. And so, well, the teacher's talking about Thursday, and Clinton's got his hand up, and he's like, And I said, and Miss Smith was like, Clinton, do you have? He goes, I have a question for Mr. Murrile. And so I said, well, Clinton, I said, what is your question? And he had a shirt on that had like it had a Batman logo on it, it had a Superman logo on it, it had a Green Lantern logo on it, and it had a Flash logo on it on his thing. And he goes, Mr. Murrile, which one's your favorite? Which one of these is your favorite? And I said, well, I like all of them, man. I said, they all got different powers. I said, Batman's got his belt, and Superman, I said, he can fly. I said, and the Flash, I said, he's fast. I said, and Green Lantern, he's got a ring. And I held up my ring like this, and he goes, and Clinton he goes, his ring is green. Just like that's not a Green Lantern ring that you have. His ring is green. And I said, you're right, his ring is green, But you know what? He wanted me to care about what was important to him, which was the superhero. And I was able to connect with him by just having that quick conversation. Well, in a kindergarten classroom, that devolved into everybody. So then I've got 10 hands up. I like Superman. I like Spider-Man. I said, well, I'm going to tell you what. Miss Smith wants to talk about Thursday right now. So we got to get back to talking about Thursday right now.
Okay, but Greg, hold on. No, listen, that right there. No. One, I love it's real, but I'm gonna pause there for a second because I need to make this a teaching point. Okay, what that kid did is he did a GTKY just to get to know you, right?
Absolutely.
So here's what I get teachers not understanding. Even if it was an impromptu, right? Okay, Murrile comes into the classroom. Holy crap, he's causing rabbit. I'm joking, right?
Exactly.
But here's the deal. The kid said, hey, I don't want to know about Thursday. I want to know what Mr. Murrile likes about these 4 in my shirt. And then the kids are all like, well, and that's why I say, if I were modeling for your teacher, right? Yeah. I would say this is a perfect opportunity to pause Thursday for one moment and to go around, because think about who they are. You got to know your kids. It's kindergarten. Right. There's no way that Murrile gets to answer that question and not everybody else does. So in kinder, you're just going to have to stop.
Yes.
And we're going to go around. We're going to say, okay, look at his shirt. And every kid is going to, but here's what I would tell them. And I really mean this. I want this structured. I want this organized. And I'm telling, okay, so I'm going to call on you guys. And if you're sitting in a circle or if you're in your chairs, I'm going to try to give you the direction. And I'm going to have the young man come stand with his shirt. And I'm going to say, okay, Jonathan, which one do you like? Sarah, which one do you like? And I would call on them, and then I would tell them, now this was why we stopped. This was important, because sometimes what Thursday is the content. I'm putting air quotes, right?
Correct.
That's important. Yep. But because we spend so much time with each other here in kindergarten, I think it's also important to know which character we like.
That's
because
right.
As much as we know that about each other, when we have differences, or when we dislike something, or when we have conflicts, or and when we like each other, we're going to know more about each other the more times we ask about those questions. So what I tell teachers is, don't forget that embedding with intentionality instead of the impromptu, when Murrile comes in, embedding those GTKY moments and threading them throughout your day, then what happens is you want to say, so today we learned about Thursday, but we also learned about which superhero we would like, and they're both important. Does that make sense when I break it down?
Yeah, because let me tell you what, they're important to a 5-year-old. Okay, we have our own importances as adults, but sometimes we aren't willing to look at it through the lens of a student, and we don't look at it through the lens of a kid. And I think that's one of the things that I've always tried to do, and especially as an administrator, is I want to look at this through the lens of where they're coming from. You know, because here's my thing. You said it a while ago, you used the word punishment. Okay. You know, punishment has such a negative connotation to it. It's just, punitive, you know? And so I don't, because there's a famous quote from a guy named, his last name is Brazelton, and I keep it on my little agenda that I use for my faculty meetings and things. It's on the bottom, and it says punishment without education is a waste of time, basically. You know, if you punish a student without educating them, okay, then nothing came of it. It literally, so what we have to understand is punishment is not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is corrective action and educating whatever happened on, there's a right way and a wrong way for this to happen. We want to encourage you to do the right thing, not the wrong thing next time. Don't make the same mistake twice.
No, I agree with you. Well, here's the deal. They're kids. They're going to make it 2, 3, 4,
Absolutely.
5, 6. So what, to kind of add value to what you say, I always say that's why for me, after publishing restorative discipline practices and training restorative discipline for the first couple of years of this work, I started to slowly pull back from that word discipline. And here's why, Murrile, because when I would go into school districts and I would try to teach them an alternative to it, they were still like, but where's the word discipline? Because when I was at Ed White and we were piloting this, we were doing it just in 6th grade, and I would have 7th and 8th grade teachers come up to me, and I didn't realize, but they were being facetious at the time. They would come up and say, hey, Curtis, are we still doing restorative discipline here? You know, are we still piloting? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, it's 6th grade, right? And you're like, well, I saw a couple 6th graders being disrespectful to teachers, or I saw these 6th graders being tardy, or wasn't that a 6th grader in a fight? And these 7th and 8th grade teachers, I was like, what is your point here? And they're like,
yeah, exactly.
Well, Greg, which is what they were doing. They were going, I thought we were doing restorative discipline. It doesn't seem like much discipline. And I was like, whoa. So what you're hearing is when you do discipline, you're not seeing the punishment. That's because discipline, the word discipline, I tell them, if you break it down, it has a lot of different definitions, right? And one of them is more Latin, to teach, to train, to disciple, to be a lifelong learner. But in education, we have twisted and modified definition of discipline to punishment, negative, punitive. And to me, we won't change that, which is why I eventually abandoned the concept of restorative discipline as my platform and went to restorative practices, because I tell them, if it's a practice, we should be practicing. And for me, what I practice when it comes to kids making poor choices, as we're using our words today, I tell them vocabulary is key. So restorative practices helps me teach kids accountability by having a conversation and then discussing how to make it right, and then discussing what are we going to learn from that, and then at the end putting a consequence at the very end of that. So there's kind of an equation that goes through it. But like you said, I always say it's a mistake to not use our mistakes as part of the learning process.
Absolutely.
And so our philosophies are aligned. I just think that what some of the educators struggle with is, well, we've always done it this way. And I said, and you're a perfect example, because you don't, Greg, I will tell you the one thing that since I've traveled the United States now and wait outside of Texas, because I'm going to tell you, there are some listeners that are going to listen to this. And when you mention corporal punishment, they're going to cringe, because when I tell them that still happens in the state of Texas, you should see their faces. But I tell them, don't judge us. This is our culture. This is how we grew up.
Correct.
But if we go full circle and go back to what we were talking about, the kids that you're building relationships with, you're just being real. And I had a gentleman on here, and I don't know if you heard the episode with Joe Beckman. He says sometimes we're too busy trying to be extraordinary as educators. It's at the ordinary, when you're ordinary.
That's a fact. Absolutely.
When you're ordinary is when you make what I call, Dave Stewart calls them moments of genuine connection. What are your thoughts on that and being ordinary?
Well, I think this. I think that's what everybody truly wants. You know, whether it's a student, a teacher, a parent, whatever. You know, they want to know that I understand them for who they are. Okay, you know, it's not about where they come from. It's not about you know, anything like that. You know, I think, you know, we're going through a crazy time in the United States of America right now. I mean, just a crazy time. And not to, I don't want this to be political at all, you know, but I think a lot of the problems that we have with what's going on right now is the fact that to me, everybody's ordinary, and we need to treat them that way, you know. And my thing is this, we've one of the things that I've told my teachers every day, and it's a simple word, but I think it's so important to our mission and what we do, and that word is grace. Okay, that we have got to extend grace to each other and our kids every day. Mm-hmm. And when you look at if you want to look at a definition of grace is undeserved favor. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if I look at grace, if a kid had a bad day yesterday, okay, tomorrow's a new day. We wipe that slate clean tomorrow. If my teachers know this, if I go into the classroom and that clip at the beginning of the day is not on green, if that kid didn't get the reset and that kid didn't get start, then I will go over there and move that myself and make sure, hey, everybody starts on green every day. I don't care that yesterday wasn't good. I want to know about today. He's got a new chance. And I got some affirmation of that the other day. I had a little boy, and he's a pill. You know, you got those call them ringtail tutors, those little ringtail tutors. And he was in the cafeteria, and he's raising his hand, and the kids love to kind of tell about who's on what color. They love to, when I'm in the cafeteria at lunchtime, Mr. Murrile, so-and-so's on what, and I remind them, I say, look, what color are you on? I said, I want to know what color you're on, you know, and they'll tell me, well, normally this kid is not on the top part of the chart. Let's just put it that way. This kid is not. And all the kids on the other side of the table and they were like adamant, like that day, like, I got something I want to tell you. Like I could tell it was important. And I said, what's going on? They said, Mr. Murrile, Caleb is on purple. Caleb's on purple today. And I was like, Caleb. And he's like, I'm on purple, Mr. Murrile. He was so proud of himself. But more importantly, those kids were so proud of him because he's normally not on purple. But that day he was. And what that showed me was this, because the day before he had not had a good day. What that showed me, though, more importantly to me was that teacher, my classroom teacher, she extended grace to him. Because I promise you this, more than likely, it was probably tough to get him to purple, but she used it as motivation for him. Mm-hmm. Okay. She knew that having that opportunity to get there would do, you know, oh, you get more flies with honey. Mm-hmm. I think she used that. And her and I had that conversation later on about it. And she said, you know, he had so many bad days, Mr. Murrile. I knew he needed to have a good one, you know. And she said, I tried something different. And I said, yeah. I love it, man. I said, that's great stuff right there.
So I think when you, what I'm taking away from what you just said, Greg, is like, I think sometimes even reflecting on how I led as a principal, sometimes we're forced, just because of the circumstances of education in our communities, we're almost to a certain forced to lead with discipline. But what I love what you're saying, I think, and this is what I've tried to kind of echo in my blogs and stuff lately, here is the perfect opportunity mid-pandemic to start leading with grace. That means, absolutely. I know you mean that, and I know that, but I'm saying is I'm trying to get our listeners to understand, if there was ever a time to embed grace with each other, and with our students, and with our staff, and with our communities, like, now is the time. And I'm trying to get educators to understand, you hit Control Alt Delete, you get to reset your mindset. Like, this is the perfect opportunity in education to reset our mindsets and to start leading, teaching, and supporting with grace and multiple chances through every lens in education. I know you echo that because that's how you're leading, but great job. So I will tell you then, I guess if you're leading with grace, I guess it's working, because congratulations, you were just acknowledged as the region. What region is it?
We're Region 3.
Region 3.
Victoria's Region 3.
Yeah, the Region 3 TASSP principal of the region, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So congratulations. So how did that feel? How'd that feel, brother?
Well, of course, this is the one. You remember Coach Apple that used to be the baseball coach at Hallettsville. So Jimmy Apple, he and I are still friends. We do some radio broadcasting here locally and do games and stuff on the radio for some of our local teams. And he sent me a congratulatory the other day, and he and I were kind of having a back and forth. And I told him, I said, the one thing about being a principal, there are a lot of similarities to being a coach in a lot of ways. But the biggest one to me is this, and I'll ask you a question. What do you think made you a good coach, Kevin, when you were doing it? What made you good?
I think what made me good at the coach was the way that I was able to care about kids in a way that was real, genuine, and authentic. And it wasn't, it wasn't like everybody else. Like you said, I took what my good coaches did. I took what my bad coaches did, and I tried to be the best that I could be. But I generally found ways to connect with kids, and that would be different for all of them. And I would use those connections to empower them to feel like they could do anything.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately, I guess kind of what I'm getting at is through that, they performed better on the field. Mm-hmm. So I would always say this: practice belongs to me, but the games belong to you, because I don't get to step in the batter's box. I don't get to step on the pitcher's mound. I don't get to, flip a double play. I don't. You guys have to do that on Tuesday and Friday night. And to me, it's the same thing. I get to make out the lineup card here. I get to make the decisions and do all those kind of things. But ultimately, my staff. My staff gets the accolades because they get the wins for our campus.
Absolutely.
And I'm driving the train, so to speak, if you want to say that. And I enjoy that, but I can't tell you enough how phenomenal my staff is. I mean, when COVID hit in March, we literally gave them a weekend to get ready. And that entire weekend, my building was full of people. They were up here working that whole weekend because they didn't want our kids to miss a drop. And it came to Monday. We rolled out our online learning plan, and our kiddos were off and running. And our teachers it was so amazing to watch. I mean, absolutely amazing to watch them work. I mean, and so and now coming into this school year, they were so ready to get back. I mean, I was having to not let them come because of some things we were doing with COVID. No, I'm sorry. They're like, Mr. Riley, we need to get in our classrooms. We've got stuff we got to do. And I'm like, I know. I said, I can't let you come. We were doing all that stuff. And it's just that award for me is the fruit of the labor of all the people here. And when I say the people here, my staff, my students, and maybe most importantly, the families that support us here. You used a word a while ago that was important, and that word was trust. And I think above all else, we have built tremendous trust with our stakeholders in our community here. It's one of the reasons that I'm somewhat comfortable with the fact that we allow corporal punishment and that we use it. Is parents trust me with that, and that's a huge trust right there, man. I mean, huge, but it's also the reason, like I said, unless I know for sure that's what then we don't use it. And it's only at when the parent wants
their discretion. Yeah, absolutely.
Correct. They want that for their student. They ask, then it's used. But if it's at all not, then we use alternative means and use other means of discipline and stuff like that. So in that term, but I think trust is the thing. and we've got tremendous trust. I have tremendous trust for my staff. And I think more than anything, if you ever ask a teacher, what's the one thing you want out of your administrator? I think if they're being honest with you, I know this is what I would always say to the administrators I work for is just have my back, buddy, man, have my back. And I think my teachers know that. I've got their back. They understand this. They make a mistake. We're going to talk about it and try to make sure we don't make the same mistake twice. Just like the same conversation I had with the kids. I mean, it's like, hey, that was literally, that was not a good choice. Okay. So we got to make sure that doesn't happen again. It's the same conversation, but I think we've built tremendous trust in our community. We built tremendous trust in what we do here at school. And so that goes a long way in the things that we do here in Shiner.
So I don't mean to put you on the spot, and some people have been able to answer this question or not, but is there anything specifically you guys do, Murrile, to help build trust? And the reason I say that, give you an example. We used to do things like Family Feast Friday where we would eat together as a staff. We would do so my point is I'm just trying to say for our listeners, is there they can't recreate Shiner, Texas, but is there something that you believe like, hey, if I could give a message to other administrators and leaders out there, or even teachers to come back and take to their leaders, what would be maybe a suggestion or two that they could implement to try to simulate and emulate what's happening at Shiner Elementary?
Number one is this, okay? One of the, and this is a lot in dealing with parents. So one of my favorite things, and it's been since I began administration, one of the favorite things the parents like to say is they like to deal in the world of, is it fair or not fair? Fair to my kid, not fair. Well, I have always viewed fairness as a relative term. Okay. What's fair to Kevin Curtis and what's fair to Greg Murrile, even with the same situation, are going to be two different things because you have a different view of that. I have a different view of it. So the thing that I always say when people bring up the fair question is, I said, you're right. I said, it may not be fair in your eyes. I said, but I do want to ask you this. I said, it is consistent. I said, what I've done in this situation time and time again is the same. And I've been consistent regardless of who it was and what it was, the situation, what it was. We've been consistent. So I would say that's number one. Be consistent in what you do, however that is. If you have a discipline plan, follow that discipline plan and be consistent with it. The other thing is this. I just think this. You said it a while ago. I'm passionate about what I do. I love your passion, man. It's just like, and that's something you can't do. And we talked about fake. You can't do fake. But I think more than anything, my parents and my staff, and I know this about my staff and my parents, whatever, is alongside Grace here at Shiner Elementary School, we love our kids and we will do anything for them. And I think once that exists, okay, and getting them to know that and getting that to exist, knowing that they're going to be loved every day when they're here, even sometimes hard love, this, that, and, but knowing that's not just a term thrown around here, that is true, that it's very much a family atmosphere. When you got K through 12 on one campus, and I'm telling you, this is the thing I think that's the coolest. So when my son was a senior on the football team 5 years ago or whatever, he was number 77. Okay. And so, the seniors, they kind of had a weird schedule. So Caleb would end up, him and Taylor, one of his buddies, he was our guard. They would end up coming through the cafeteria sometimes. And the kids didn't even know his name, but let me tell you what they knew. They knew who number 77 was. Okay. And he'd sit at the table with them. He'd do whatever. And then we go to the pep rally and they're high-fiving and the kids, that's one of those special things that gets to happen here that doesn't get to happen everywhere, because our kids get to see those kids and they get to see them be a role model and stuff. And I never realized until after the fact how much that affected Caleb. It was a big deal for the kids, but it was a bigger deal for him because he recognized that he had to set the example for those guys. And it's gone over into his going to college and now him becoming a coach and all those things. I saw him mature through that process. And I think that's one thing that helps with our secondary kids here on this campus is they understand that they have a role in setting the example for our little ones.
Right.
And that being visible and being those things, they have a responsibility to that. And so I think it helps on the secondary side with discipline and things like that as well, because those kids are trying to be the example and not the exception to that stuff. So that's a big deal here too.
No, I think, and that's why I said, I mean, I just asked you because I think there's no way to simulate what Shiner ISD has. Right, it's very unique for what it is. And I don't want listeners to listen to this podcast today and realize like, but we're not Shiner, and you can't be. So for me I don't want them to be Shiner ISD. I want them to learn from Shiner ISD. I want them to learn from Greg Murrile on what are some of the things that he believes educators can take away from this platform. Like, that's why I had you on the show. And so, when it comes to just building relationships, what other messages do you have that you feel passionate about that you want to get out today?
Well, I just, the biggest thing, you have to be genuine in what you do, and I think one of the things that there's two things that are, there are people who are passionate about what they do. And this is what I do, Kevin, especially in the coaching world. Passion is a great thing, boy, but passion can get you in trouble sometimes too. Because I mean, you're passionate about something, your filter usually turns off when you're passionate about it. So you might say something that you're like, I'll grab that bag, I can't grab, but I think the other piece of passion is compassion, being compassionate when it's needed. I had a lady come in the other day and she wanted to enroll her grandchildren. Well, she didn't have her paperwork with her. And the biggest thing is she didn't have the proof of conservatorship over the kiddos, and I was trying to explain to her and she just starts crying. She's breaking down. And I'm like, ma'am, I said, I want to help you. I said, she goes, you don't understand. She said, I don't have any of those things because my house burned to the ground. She said, I've been living in a hotel for the last 3 months. She said, I don't have anything, And so I said, well, where did your kids go to school last? And she told me the school district they were in. I said, well, let me call. So I called the principal over there. I said, hey man, I said, I got this lady here. He goes, yeah. They had a house fire back at right when COVID happened. It was just like apparently she got a triple whammy out of this deal, And so we've been spending the last 2 days working with them, trying to get the kiddos in school and get them enrolled, all that kind of stuff. And it goes back to what you said before, at first I was hung up in paperwork. Okay, you don't have the right paperwork for this, and you don't have the right paperwork, and I'm sitting there going, but I can't. But then when I took the time to listen to her story and understand what had happened, it totally changed my mind to, I got to help this lady, man. This lady just wants her kids in school. I understand there's bureaucracy and red tape and we're supposed to do it this way and we're supposed to do this and but you know what? I'm going to get that information from somewhere else so that I can get these kiddos in school, because right now I'm not, are they getting 3 meals? Are they getting, my mind completely went from the fact that she as an adult didn't have paperwork to, where are those 2 kids? What's going on with them right now? How can I get them in here so that I can make sure they're taken care of at least between 7:50 and 3:30 every day, and that's the piece of what we do that goes back to what I said in the beginning. I have an opportunity in my job to change lives every day, and that's so important above all else in our mission. How are we affecting their lives in a positive way every day?
Yeah. Brother, I love that. Passion versus compassion and how oh man, that's powerful. Well, hey coach, we are wrapping up on our time together, man. Any parting words that you want our listeners to?
Hey, I just want to thank you, man. Like I said, I've been a fan of yours since you started doing this, and it's just, I love it, because I think as educators, we need to always be looking to learn something new, and maybe, everything I do, I picked up from somebody somewhere. I picked something up somewhere from somebody, when I was a coach, when I as an administrator, when I was a teacher, and I think that us having this conversation, if someone can take a snippet of what we talked about, and put it to what they're doing and their practice, and I'll take it back to what I said before, and positively affect a kid's life, then this hour and 15 minutes that we've been talking about here is worth everything to me, because that's the beauty of our mission. We've got an opportunity to change lives every day. So.
Wow, brother, you couldn't have closed this show on a better note, man. I want to take a minute to affirm you, Greg. You know, I've watched you for 20 years transform into the person that you are today. And what I saw in you, the fire, the passion, and the caring about kids, even though we were kind of pointed and our compass was in a different direction, you still are the same person. And I believe that Shiner ISD is better for hiring you and putting you in this situation, because what better leader to put a person who bleeds education and who understands education, who lives and breathes this, but also is compassionate and giving grace. I think that Shiner Elementary and the region is better off in having an example of what Shiner ISD is putting out as a product, because what needs to be put on the map besides the beer is the fact that you guys, hey, I'm gonna throw it out there, is the fact that you guys are a family knit community, and the fact that you trust each other. And so if I want our listeners to take away, you can't be Shiner because you don't have their culture and their history. You don't have the years of transformation. And as I said earlier about trust is given and mistrust is earned, you guys have given trust and earned and continue to earn that trust in all that you do. And so I just want to thank you for, one, your time today, stepping away from the campus and being on the show. 2, for being an educator that cares about kids. And 3, for just being a good friend of mine, man. I appreciate you, man.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much. I appreciate being on the podcast. And like I said, anyone who happens to watch this, you're welcome to contact me.
I was going to say, tell them how they can get a hold of you, Greg.
So you know, if you go to the Shiner ISD website and just go to the elementary school page, there's a link to my email, and you certainly can email me anytime or whatever it is. And then I'm still a Facebook guy. I'm like an old man, so I don't know Insta whatever and the other ones. I don't know Snapchat. My wife and kids have their own little Snapchat thing that I'm not a part of, and from what I've gathered, they spend most of their time on there making fun of me, but which is fine. That's whatever it is.
Yeah.
But so I do Facebook, so you can look me up on Facebook. I one of the things that happened to me, and I'll tell you how the principal thing actually happened, the principal of the year thing. Gary Figueroa down in El Campo, he's a junior principal in El Campo.
Yeah, I presented at his campus this last year.
Yeah, so Gary and I, of course, are good friends, and there were a couple other guys. Gary actually nominated me for that award. And, you know, when he called me and told me he was going to nominate me, he said, you know, Greg, he said, the one thing that I've really enjoyed over this time, I was making a series of just silly videos. They were kind of like morning announcements, but I would do these videos, and we'd do the tomahawk chop like we do at our football games. And then I'm probably the only principal in the world that has a plunger right here. And then I would put my fedora on. And so let me here, I'll give you this. We'll close with this. This
okay.
This is how I closed my videos anyway.
Yep.
And so let me see here.
I enjoyed watching them, so I'm sure.
So and so this is what we would do.
Let's play the Shiner National Anthem, the Shiner song.
So this is actually our school fight song, but it's a polka. And so this is how we would close out our show with me. And there's a band here called the Shiner Hobo Band. And there's a lady that dances around with a plunger in front of the band while they play it. And so that's where this comes from. So that gives you a little idea of what we did and how we did it. So anyway.
All right, Coach.
Get to Shiner. Oh, what a day that will be. So that's our fight song, actually. And so that's how I would end my show. So.
All right, brother. Hey, man. Thanks for your time, man.
You're welcome, Kevin. Thank you so much. See you later, buddy.
All right, brother. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.